Hi, I'm Doug,
And I'm Yvette.
and your search for the next amazing podcast is over.
Welcome to Search Complete. Hello and welcome to Search Complete, a podcast where we see what the internet has been searching for by taking the first part of a question and seeing what Google thinks we want to know. But before typing it in, we'll guess how it auto-completes and you can play along at home. We can have a good laugh at society's expense, then we'll realise that we actually want to know the answers.
So, our phrase for today is it normal to? I think this is a slightly more risque one.
Getting a bit more personal. So what do you reckon people might be worried is abnormal about themselves?
I think they will be searching, is it normal to suck my thumb?
As an adult, I suppose.
Yeah, so obviously it makes sense as a kid, but it's one of those things that I think quite a lot of people still do, but might feel that it's not appropriate to do.
And probably would rather Google it than actually ask someone about it.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying. All of these don't really want to ask someone about it, so I'm just going to Google it instead.
Well, I think a lot of them also might be like health concerns, because I think people tend to look up their symptoms first before they go and see a doctor. You know, if you look up, is it normal to, and then they find out, oh, actually that is normal, then you don't need to go to the doctor, right?
Yeah, no need to wait 2 months for an appointment.
Yeah, so I think like it might be stuff like, I don't know, is it normal to have hiccups every day, or you know, something that's kind of... Is
that one you've written down?
That's what I wrote,
You
yeah.
wrote it down?
Did you write that?
No, I did not write that one down, but I want to keep a score.
Okay.
Getting competitive here. So is it normal to have hiccups every day?
Yeah, or something like that. You know, some kind of health things.
Okay, well...
Have you got anything on the health theme?
Yes. Is it normal to pee blood?
Yeah, I feel like that would be a concern.
Yeah, you should go see a doctor if you do pee blood, but I think that's probably a fairly common ailment that people would want to search. Or like hear other people talking about it as well. You're like, is that bad? Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
But I think it's something people will search for.
Yeah, I think still on the health theme, there might be sort of mental health type things as well. Like, is it normal to cry every day? Or is it normal to prefer being alone? Or is it normal to talk to myself? Stuff like that.
Yeah, is it normal to talk? That's an interesting one. I want to know the answer to that one. What do you think?
I feel like it's a sort of thing where people would not be sure about.
You talk to yourself.
I talk to myself a lot.
Yeah.
I think you noticed.
Muttering under your breath. Stupid husband hasn't done this.
Nah, that's not what we talk about.
No. So yeah, I think that's a good one. I've got another one that's a little weird, but I think is a kind of a taboo thing. Is it normal to eat the apple core? It's not, by the way.
Well, if you've seen someone doing it and you're like, I've got to Google this. This doesn't seem normal.
What is going on? Why? It's like, honestly, I see it at the same level as eating banana peel.
I feel like it can't be that bad.
Have you tasted, like, one of those little pips? I know you don't eat apples very much.
Yeah, but I mean, you could still get rid of the pips and then eat the core. The core is just like more apple, right?
No.
Or is it?
No, it's not. I mean,
don't know. I'm
sure...
not eating the core because it's not normal.
Exactly.
What else? I think maybe like obscure fears as well. Like, is it normal to be afraid of? Or like, is it normal to be afraid of sex? Or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. Fears is probably a good one. I don't think we'll see, like, is it normal to be afraid of snakes or spiders? I think that's another one. Probably like closed spaces or...
No, I feel like that's pretty...
Yeah, I
like,
guess
you know,
heights
there's
as
that
well.
weird one, I don't know what the phobia itself is called, but like, to be afraid of like little close together holes and stuff.
Tryptophobia or something.
Yeah.
I was actually just listening to a podcast about that. That's freaky stuff. Yeah, maybe. No one's actually going to be, do I have tryptophobia or whatever it is.
Is it normal to be afraid of the holes?
Holes. Relating back to the sex one.
Yeah, all holes. Afraid.
You got any others? I got a couple more.
Yeah.
Is it normal to sleep naked? I think it's fine, by the way. But
I feel like people might Google maybe like, is it better to sleep naked or is it like healthy to sleep naked?
Yeah, I guess so. You don't think they'd actually be worried about it? They'll more be like, it's obviously fine, but is it actually better?
Yeah, I don't know if that would be a thing. You'd be worried that you're like abnormal for doing it.
Any others?
Having peeking at your list, I think we might actually have a similar one about crushes.
Yeah.
So, is it normal to fancy my teacher?
That's exactly what I put.
Or I've also put like my cousin as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but then
you didn't want to
seem
seem
weird.
awkward in case any of your cousins listen to the show.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think awkward, basically inappropriate crushes. My final one that I could think of is it normal to like the taste of blood?
And that's a good one, yeah.
Because that's definitely, again, a sort of taboo thing, but I know, like, you talk to some people, they're like, yeah, blood tastes fine, and other people are like, no, it's disgusting, why would you do it?
Blood is lives.
Yeah, just watched a vampire TV show, so, was it Dracula?
Dracula.
Yeah. That's probably why it's in my head. Yeah, I think, to be honest, I thought this one would be an easy one, but actually thinking of them, it became a lot harder the more I thought about it.
Maybe you're not as abnormal as you thought you were.
Yeah, or maybe I just think I am, the abnormal things I do are perfectly normal. So.
You're going to see the results and then you'll start second guessing everything you already do.
Alright, now comes the fun bit. Let's look it up. You can remember the results are likely to be different. We actually had a listener send in a screenshot of what they had, but they're from America, so they had a very well, some of them were similar, some of them were very different to what we got. So your results may vary, but I'm going to type it in now. Is it normal to... Oh, why don't we think of that one? You want to read some of them out?
So is it normal to miss a period, to have discharge, to get new moles, to bleed on the pill? So I feel like these are all kind of health ones we mentioned about. So is it normal to lose hair? Is it normal to talk to yourself?
Ah, you're winning this one for sure.
Is it normal to not want sex?
Another point to you.
Is it normal to poop twice a day? Is it normal to poop 5 times a day?
5 times? Oh my goodness.
I feel like there's been a bit of an escalation between is it normal to poop twice a day and poop 5 times a day.
You'd think it would be like poop twice a day, poop 3 times a day, poop 4 times a day, but no.
Clearly people mostly search for twice a day or 5 times a day.
Yeah, this is incognito, but... Anyway, the final one, is it normal to bleed when pregnant? Alright, I'm not too surprised by some of these. A lot of them are, like you said, medical related. How many did you get right in the end?
So I had, is it normal to talk to yourself? And I said, is it normal to be afraid of sex?
Yeah, I think that's close enough. So that's a couple for you, and absolutely diddly squat for me.
Is it normal to fancy a teacher? Is not a concern. People just...
No, clearly it's an okay thing to do. Well, you heard it here, folks. Right. We're going to go away and look into some of these more interesting ones, and we'll be right back with some of the answers. And we are back. So, Yvette, what have you been looking into?
So I've been researching a few of the female health questions, and I was actually quite surprised and maybe a little bit sad at how many like female health queries there were, because I think periods and discharge and just general female health can seem quite taboo and people don't like to talk about it. So I thought it probably important to cover a few of these. So I'm going to start with, is it normal to miss a period? So a lot of the sort of health ones I've been researching, I've got off the nhs.uk website, because that's quite a good and quite reliable source for medical things. There's a number of reasons why your periods can stop or you can miss one. So the most common reasons are, number one, pregnancy.
I was about to say, yeah. I imagine that is
so I think that would probably be your number one concern on the list, especially if you weren't on any kind of birth control or something. Yes, obviously take a pregnancy test if you are worried about that. Stress
is enough to make you miss a period.
Yeah. So stress can cause an increase in cortisol, which is a hormone that interferes with the release of estrogen and progesterone, which can then disrupt your menstrual cycle.
Yeah. I think it also affects testosterone as well, because if you're under a lot of stress, that prevents muscle growth. So cortisol all around not good. Probably good for like the short term, but long term.
Yeah, so I think that just sort of shows about the importance of
I'm actually really shocked
at
how much stress plays a part in periods.
Yeah, just in general health, I think, as well.
For sure.
Sudden weight loss and being overweight can both affect your periods. So if you're overweight, your body may produce excess estrogen that can regulate your reproductive cycle. Doing too much exercise.
Too much exercise?
Yeah, because that can put like too much stress on your body.
Yeah, I guess, same as stress, basically.
And then obviously taking the contraceptive pill will affect your periods.
Yeah.
Menopause. And then polycystic ovary syndrome, which is actually really common. Apparently about 1 in 10 women have it.
Okay.
And that just means that in your polycystic ovaries contain a large number of harmless follicles, which are underdeveloped sacs in which eggs develop. So if you've got polycystic ovary syndrome, then the sacs are unable to release an egg, meaning that you don't always ovulate.
Okay.
So you can sometimes ovulate, but not all the time. So then you can just sort of randomly skip periods. If you've stopped having periods and you're not sure why, the first thing to do is to take a pregnancy test, because even if you're on birth control, that can not always be 100% effective. But if you're not pregnant and then you miss 3 or more periods in a row, so for 3 months, then you should go and see your GP and they can look into these other things, and they'll probably ask you about the things on the list, like are you overly stressed, have you gained or lost a lot of weight. If you're a sports person, they might refer you to a specialist.
There you go. Don't do too much sport. It's bad for you.
Well, there are ways to
pros and cons,
manage it if that is your livelihood. But if you've just gone a bit hard on your New Year's resolutions, you might want to revise that. So following on from that, would you like to hear about discharge?
I would love to hear about some discharge.
Yeah, so when we first sort of mentioned it, I think you sort of made a kind of noise.
So it was a natural reaction.
I think the word discharge is quite gross.
Yeah, it's kind of like moist.
Yeah,
I'm okay with moist.
I don't really know why. Like, people always seem to have such a problem with the word moist, but literally the first thing I think of is cakes. Maybe that's just because I eat and bake a lot of cakes. So actually vaginal discharge is really normal, and most women and girls get it. So it's a fluid or mucus that keeps the vagina clean and moist and protects it from infection.
Okay.
And it's usually not anything to worry about. So if it doesn't have a strong or unpleasant smell, is clear or white, is thick and sticky, or is slippery and wet, all of those are fine. Mm-hmm. But if you notice any sort of changes in your discharge, like a different colour or smell or texture, that can be like a sign of infection.
Okay.
And then if you produce more than normal, if you're itchy or sore, if you bleed between periods or after sex, as well as weird discharge, you get pain when peeing, or you've got like tummy and thigh, like general pelvic pain, they can all be sort of signs of an issue. So then you should go and see your GP or sexual health clinic.
Is that about it?
Yeah. So
it is normal. It's normal, but if things start changing around, go see your doctor.
Yeah. So I mean, the type of discharge I think does vary depending on where you are in your cycle.
Yeah.
And it can be affected by sort of things like if you're aroused or if you're breastfeeding, it can like change the discharge you produce, but it's not anything to worry about. So
Understood.
It's like one of the top things to Google, and I feel like maybe people just aren't educated that it's normal.
I don't think so. Hopefully people are educated that if they don't feel like something's right, they should go see a doctor.
Yeah.
I guess if you're concerned, you should go see a doctor.
Yeah, I mean the search results will probably hopefully reassure people that it is normal.
Yeah. And there's some really good websites, like you said. Most of this was from the NHS website, right? So,
I mean, which is probably like you're only going to get if searching in the UK, but.
Well, hopefully there's some other more relevant ones. You can still, if you're from not in the UK, you could still go to the NHS website if you wanted to. It just won't come up
it's a great
as one of the top results. So from one discharge to a slightly different type of discharge, I had the pleasure of looking into, is it normal to poop? I've condensed it down into multiple times a day.
Okay. So you didn't look up separately, poop twice a day and poop 5 times a day?
I think I would have come up with the same results. But it turns out the normal amount the doctors can't actually decide what a normal amount is, but we're talking about 3 times a day to 3 times a week is perfectly normal. So all the way up
a really
to
big
3 times a day is fine. Yeah. It's just, honestly, it's dependent on so many factors, which I'll get to later on. But there was this study that was done with, I think it was about 2,000 participants.
That's a lot of poo.
50% of them said they poop once a day. So that's the majority. 28% said twice a day, which I was a little surprised about that it was so high. And 5.6% said once or twice a week. So that's outside the norm. So that's very constipated. What do you think is the most popular time of day to go for a poo?
I don't know. Maybe in the evening when people are at home. I don't know. People tend to do things in the evening though, don't they?
Yeah. It is the morning, actually. And although it didn't say in anything I looked at, I imagine it's probably due to coffee. Everyone has their morning coffee.
Well, I don't drink coffee, and I usually go in the morning. So I was going to say maybe it's like a digesting overnight type thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's also that. There wasn't a reason given, but that's a good idea as well. So there are many things that can affect your poop schedule, how often you go. One of the main ones is diet, lots of fiber, stay healthy. Drinking lots of water is very important as well, because poo is actually made up of a lot of water. And the other one, coffee, is also, or caffeine really. It's because it makes your muscles contract.
Okay.
So that is why it makes you need to go to the bathroom. Another thing that affects how often you go is age. Generally get more constipated as you age, just things are moving around a little bit less. Exercise helps as well. That's sort of like movement. So you have this thing called peristaltic movement, which is basically where your like the tubes inside you contract slowly, sort of pushing things down, and exercise can help with that. So if you're a little constipated, go for a little jog. Should help a lot, actually.
Yeah. I think we talked a bit about this last week when we were saying how long does it take to digest food.
Yes, 100% of our podcasts have had poop in.
We'll try not to make it a theme.
Try not to make a hat trick. Illness can also be a big part as well. Just like general stomach bugs, stuff like that. And if you've got like slightly more chronic illness, like IBDs, stuff like that. And stress. Again.
Back to stress.
Back to stress. Can have a big issue. If you fall outside of the 3 times a day or 3 times a week, you should probably go see your doctor.
Yeah.
Probably help out. Make sure everything's in working order. One other thing that actually I've just remembered here is like gut bacteria is going to play a huge, like more and more research is being done into your microbiome. And, you know, there are even studies that suggest, you know, having poop transplants, fecal transplants can help with if you've got like issues like IBS.
Well, isn't there a thing that people say, like, you've got more bacterial cells in your body than human cells or something like that?
Yeah,
like on the outside as well. And
well, basically in total, I think that is true, which is kind of crazy.
Imagine how much weight you could lose if you got that bacteria. It probably wouldn't be good for you, though.
So firstly, you'd die. Secondly, although they have more cells, the weight of them, the mass of them will be less. There are much smaller cells. Talking about bacteria, poop is made up of about 50% bacteria. Got some more facts here.
It gets sort of washed out of your gut as it goes through.
Yeah, it's brown because of dead red blood cells.
Yeah,
I think quite a lot of people already know. There's this thing called a Bristol stool scale, which is basically like a scale of 1 to 7 of how solid or liquid it is, but it makes it very easy to like diagnose. You know, like instead of having to describe it, you can just be like, "Here's a diagram. Where are you on the scale of 1 to 7?" Which I think is genius.
Yeah, well, I mean, people probably don't have a huge amount of experience of other people's poo.
Yeah.
So, like, if your poo is always one particular, you know, if you have a poo that's way softer than a poo that you usually have, but it's not like a, you know, not as bad as like a 7 on the scale or something, I think everything is measured within your own experience, isn't it? So having a standardised chart is quite a good idea, especially for something that people don't tend to talk about or like look at each other's poos.
Yeah. RateMyPoo.com.
Yeah.
Don't pretend. We've been on that. So yeah, you want to, for the Bristol stool scale, you want to be 3, 4 or 5 is kind of pretty normal. How much do you think a poo normally weighs?
I don't know. I remember we had once a discussion about whether you could lose 3 kilos by pooping, and then that seemed a bit...
I'll give you a hint, that's a bit high.
It was, I think we thought it was quite extreme at the time. Maybe like 500, 700 grams?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty spot on, actually. 1 pound, which is about half a kilo.
So 500 grams.
500 grams. And there you go. That was 4 poop facts for you today.
Brilliant. This has been definitely don't listen to this episode while you're having dinner.
Yeah.
If you don't want to hear about periods and poop.
So what was the next topic you looked at?
What do you want? Do you want some more female health, or do you want to hear about talking to yourself?
Let's go with talking to yourself.
Okay, I was actually super interested in researching this because I do talk to myself a lot. Looked it up, relieved to hear that inner talk is normal and in fact it's good for you.
So you said inner talk. Is that the same as talking out loud?
Yeah, so talking out loud is basically just like an extension of your internal monologue.
Yeah.
And I think everyone has like internal monologue, sort of like, where are my keys? If I was this, where would it be? And just sort of thinking through everything that you need to think about. It's obviously organised into language.
Yeah.
Yeah, so talking to yourself helps us organise our thoughts, plan actions, consolidate memories, and modulate emotions. So, in other words, it helps us control ourselves and our behaviour.
Yeah.
So there was an experiment at Bangor University where they demonstrated that talking out loud can actually improve your control over a task above what's achieved by just sort of inner speech. So they gave 28 participants a set of written instructions and asked them to either read it silently or read it out loud to themselves. And then they measured the participants' concentration and performance on the tasks, and they both were improved when the instructions had been read out loud.
I assume they were all in separate rooms, not just like everyone there at the same time.
Number one, do this. Yeah. No, so yeah, so I think they were alone. Yeah. So it wasn't like telling someone what they were going to do. It was literally talking to themselves. Yeah, so they reckon the benefit came from hearing oneself. So it was also more like an auditory command, which was better than like a written command. And this isn't in the thing, but I was also wondering about whether it like would improves your focus. Yeah, because
I think you'd slow down your thought process as well. Because if you have to vocalize something, it generally means you have to understand it better.
And you're not thinking about something else as you're reading it, and also you're reading and you're speaking, and also you're listening. Parts of your brain are all engaged at the same time. So
you just have a more comprehensive understanding of the task at hand, basically.
Yeah, so I thought that was quite interesting, because when I talk to myself, I'm often talking about something I want to do, or a conversation I'm planning to have, or just like talking through a problem that I have. And I think you do this, but you talk to me about it.
Yeah.
You know, where you're like, this thing isn't working.
That's true, I do it a lot.
And then
you just make me realise.
And then you talk to me, and then you're like, oh yeah, I realise now, and I've literally said nothing. I'm just like,
That's so true.
But I shamelessly just talk to myself about it, because I'm not worried that that's not a normal thing to do. Yeah, so I think it is quite good for sort of problem solving and...
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. I think a lot of developers, I found like the developer in my company, he always talks to himself. When I first started working there, I was like, what is he doing? This is kind of weird. But like, he's a freaking genius, so it clearly works. And I found when I started learning to code, you sort of like, when you're trying to go from A, B, C, D, you need to say it, and it makes it a lot easier to focus on, like you were saying before. Yeah,
so like there are a lot of the hits when you Google, is it normal to talk to yourself? They say like people who talk to themselves are more intelligent, and people who talk to themselves are more successful. But it's probably not the act of talking to yourself, it's the sort of benefits that come from it. So one thing that I read that I thought was really interesting was like you know how little babies are basically just chaos machines?
Yes.
They just don't know what's going on. But then when they become toddlers, they're a bit more human. And that's because when toddlers sort of learn language, that's when they begin to control their actions.
So it's the act of learning to speak.
So I guess I don't know, maybe the language sort of rationalises things for them or something. So like the example it gave was, if a toddler is approaching a hot surface, they'll say to themselves, hot, 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 and then they won't touch it, because they're sort of repeating what's been told to them.
Yeah.
So your inner speech doesn't actually start to develop until you're about 5 years old.
Oh, really long time then.
Yeah, so kids are literally, when they're thinking out loud, which is why toddlers seem to be like complete chatterboxes and rambling sometimes. Yeah, so children do tend to think out loud until they're around 7 or 8, just as part of the developmental process. And, you know, there's obviously differences between children. Some talk to themselves more, some talk less. So do you remember learning to read as a child, and then at a certain age being told to read in your head?
Yes.
Yeah, so I remember finding it really difficult, because I don't think my internal voice was fully developed yet. So I was a bit like, how can I read but not say the words? Oh. Did you ever feel like that? Or,
no, honestly
I don't know,
not.
Maybe you were a bit older when you were reading in your head or something like that.
Honestly, I don't really remember much of my childhood anyway.
Yeah, but I just thought that was quite interesting, as speaking out loud actually being part of the developmental process. So I've got a fun fact, which is that girls and women tend to process more out loud than men do.
So when you say process out loud, you mean talk to themselves? Okay. Well, okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I couldn't find why, just on a brief search, but I thought that was...
I mean, I guess women on average have better language skills.
Yeah, maybe it's just that women are more known for talking in general. I don't know.
Maybe.
And then also there's a top tip. to do with talking to yourself. Yeah, so if there's like a routine task you do every day, but then you can't remember if you've done it or not.
Yeah, happens a lot.
Yeah, they recommend that you say out loud as you're doing it.
What happens if you're brushing your teeth?
Maybe just before you do it, you say, I'm going to brush my teeth, and then you do it, and then you're more, because the talking out loud helps with the memory recall, you're more likely to remember having done it. Like, it does feel like a bit of an unnatural thing to do.
It would do.
But,
so, like, I'm locking the door.
Yeah, then it's,
howdy, neighbour.
It's literally making, like, a mental note to yourself. Or, like, sometimes when you're like, oh, yeah, I need to go to the shop today, and you could say it when you're with other people, but really you're just reminding yourself out loud.
That is true. That does happen a lot.
Yeah.
More a socially acceptable thing to say out loud.
Yeah.
When you're like about to go do something.
I feel quite, like at work, I feel like I quite often say to the room at large, or just like, to someone, and it's not, they're probably like, why are they talking to me? But I'm like, right, I need to go and do this now. And they're like, oh, okay. But it's more me talking to myself.
Yeah. Key takeaway is talk to yourself.
Yeah, it's normal, and also it's great. Best conversations I've ever had.
Rude.
Not really.
No. Okay. The next one I looked at was, is it normal to lose hair? So we're
back on the stress.
Back on the stress. It's definitely a cause. I took this as basically like balding. That is what people were asking, but I actually, before that, I wanted to look at, normal, just like lose hair, when you're brushing your hair.
Okay.
Or stuff like that. And then I'll go on to balding. So losing some hair is completely normal. We normally lose between 50 and 100 strands of hair a day.
From your head?
From your head, yeah. How many total hairs do you think are on your head?
It must be millions, right?
I don't know. Is that your guess? 1 million?
I want to say like 2 million.
2 million. It's actually only 100,000.
Oh, really?
But if you're only losing 50 to 100 strands of hair out of 100,000, it really doesn't matter. So the lifetime of a single strand of hair is between 2 to 5 years. And the growth actually goes through 3 phases. First phase, anagen phase. So this is basically where your hair is growing. And normally it will grow about 1 centimetre a month.
Okay.
It spends 90% of its lifetime in the growing phase. Then it goes to catagen phase. This is where it stops growing. It exists in this state for about 2 to 3 weeks. So not very long at all. And finally, it's the telogen phase. This is basically where it goes, well, I'm done. I've had enough. It prepares for death.
Oh, okay.
Feels very similar to catagen phase, but whatever.
So what? So there's a phase where it grows, phase where it does nothing, and then a phase where it's like, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you spend most of the time in growing phase. But three simple steps to being a hair.
Kind of like life, really, isn't it?
Constantly learning, then you kind of stop for a bit, and then
can't bother anymore, and then you're like, that's it, I'm packing up.
Exactly. So there's a lot of causes for hair loss, and in this case, I'm actually talking about balding here, so abnormal hair loss. The big one is stress.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something to do with this cortisol. I don't know.
Oh, cortisol! What are you doing to us?
There must be some benefit for it. If you've got any nutritional deficiencies, I'm sure we've all seen those Nicole Scherzinger hair and nail products. Oh, yeah. Age is another one. Your hair gets thinner, stops growing, and starts falling out. And illness as well. So the most common form of baldness is male pattern baldness. This sort of can happen to males anywhere between the ages of 30 years to 60 years. Got a few years left in me yet, although a bit of receding maybe. There's also female pattern baldness, but it's much less common.
Do you know why?
Female or different in females and males?
Why is it different between females? I assume it's like something genetic, or...
to be honest, I don't know. It must be genetic, something to do with the sex chromosomes, I guess.
Or maybe hormonal?
Yeah, I didn't come across that, unfortunately. But basically, what happens is the follicles shrink and shrink, so you get thinner hair, and eventually it stops growing hair. But the interesting thing is that the follicles don't actually go away. They just get smaller.
Too small to push your hair out?
It wasn't clear, but I guess that's one of the things. Or you do
get a hair, but it's a really weedy one?
No.
There's no hair?
There's just no hair. But this implies that hair can still be grown. So
there's all those clinics, exactly. Right, where they do whatever they do and your hair grows back.
So one of the main ones is steroid injections, because hair is just a protein. Steroids promote protein growth.
Okay.
You get some creams. And there's even been some research to suggest that it's you have stem cells, hair follicle cells, and basically as you get older, you build up genetic mutations, which is why they stop working properly. Which also suggests that with gene therapy, you could reverse hair removal.
Seems quite extreme to get gene therapy because of balding.
Yeah.
Instead of going to the clinic and getting the injections or getting a toupee.
I'm just talking in the future. Gene therapy,
blue sky,
everything.
Gene therapy.
Yeah. That's pretty much all I had. It's normal to lose a bit of hair, but balding is just a part of life. All right. This episode has had some down bits, some up bits.
I think it's been quite interesting though. Quite educational.
It has been very educational. Would also like to remind people that we are not medical professionals. Probably have to say this legally. If you're unsure about anything, please go see a medical professional.
Yep.
But
I think that is the advice on the NHS website. Go and see your doctor.
So that's everything that was given to us on the search results. Be really interested to see what was different in different countries.
Yeah, what people are worried to talk about and think might be abnormal where you are. Yeah, I was a bit disappointed there was no weird crushes or strange fears, but maybe we can do a should I be afraid of search.
Ooh, that's a good one. If you've got any ideas, let us know. The main thing I learned from this was that it's a really good idea to torture yourself while you're doing a poo.
Yeah, but not 5 times a day, ideally.
3 times a day is fine though.
Yeah, just hold those 2 in.
Yeah, those are the 2 ones. You can talk yourself into holding them in.
Yeah, you can give yourself a pep talk. Come on. Save it for tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, guys, for listening. It's been great here. You can send in any of your results that you get or any sort of phrases you want us to do for future episodes. You can email us at searchcompletepodcast@gmail.com or send us a tweet at scpodcast_UK. They'll also be linked in the show notes. I'm Doug.
And I'm Yvette.
Thanks for listening.